I don't know how you're going to respond to this, but I'm going to drop this before we hit you with everything we want to see happen. That press conference on Friday was a colossal embarrassment.
Okay.
Any reaction to that statement? Do you disagree? Why? Yeah. Well, because I think that we saw the Yankees transform right in front of our eyes to a different team. The Yankees used to be about results. Now they're wrapped up in the process and results don't matter. That was the worst thing that I've ever heard a GM say in this town.
I think
it's embarrassing.
I think one of the things is that, I think a lot of times you will find results and process tied together, right? Like a guy with bad results probably does, like really consistently bad results, probably does have bad process, and there moves there. I think the thing that I came out of that press conference understanding a couple of things. One was that there were never going to be satisfactory answers to any Yankees fan in that press conference, because the only thing they really wanted was massive change that day on November 3rd or 4th or whatever it was, and you're not getting that, okay? You knew that they're working to bring Brian Cashman back. They've already told you Aaron Boone is coming back. So that part of it was never going to make you happy to begin with. So you already went in, down 0-1 in the count, right? I think the other part of that...
Well done there, Sweeny.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, actually, that was 2 if you wanted them both gone, but
well, yeah,
I knew that they were coming back.
Okay, so you're down 0-2. Then let's give you another strike. Okay. I just think there's no way they're going to lay out the plan for you in full transparency at any point in time, because everybody, all GMs, all the teams always keep stuff close to the vest. So they can't tell you, here's who we're going to sign, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to look like, here's what we're going to look like on opening day. And I think that's another thing that everybody kind of wanted to hear. The Yankees lost. They lost in a miserable fashion in the ALCS. They got wiped out. They're clearly behind the Astros. There's nothing a week later that they're going to be able to tell you that's going to make you feel any better. So I think that, and it's not supposed to be a TV show. It's kind of an informational, okay, what about this guy? What about that guy? Give us some insight on, injury stuff going forward, who's going to need surgery. Those are all parts of the wrap-up press conference that was never, in years past, it's not a TV show to explain away something. It's just kind of informational. So I feel like you were never going to be satisfied with those answers.
It felt like it was very light on Aaron Judge, too. It was almost, we haven't really had those conversations and we're not going to disclose them, and then that was it. You barely talked about Aaron Judge. Why was that?
I think that he got to a point where there were no more discussions after opening day. There were no more negotiations, and he's close enough to free agency where it's not going to change, right? He is going, he's in a window now where other teams are calling and saying, Aaron, we're interested. If the Dodgers and Giants have probably already called. That window started Sunday at 9 a.m. Everybody can call and say, hey, we're very interested in you. We know it's going to cost a lot of money, but we're interested. Let's keep the discussion going. And who knows how many teams are lining up. Starting Thursday, 5 p.m. is when teams can start saying, okay, here's how much money we want to offer you. And when you're that close to it, the Yankees aren't going to be able to make any sort of an offer that's going to get Aaron Judge to change his mind.
But shouldn't they try?
No, because at that point, all you're doing is you're giving him leverage to say, okay, San Francisco, L.A., here's what the Yankees have offered me when nobody else is bidding against me yet. Now what are you going to do?
I agree with that. I agree with you on that.
They can't – they're in a place where they're only still bidding against themselves. Mm-hmm. So once you're getting to the point where other teams – and he's too close to let that pass, right? He's going to listen to other teams. So the Yankees at some point are going to have to resell him, say, listen, you know who we are. You know what we're about. This is why we want you, and this is why we want you here for good. But that wasn't the point in time for it, because he's not going to listen, and he's probably taking everything and say, because that's not going to be your last offer, right? So he's not going to let that be your last offer. Mm-hmm. So why would you make one there?
I agree with you on that. All right, so we're talking to Sweeny Murti. Sweeny, of course, the WFAN beat reporter for the Yankees, and he's got the podcast with our buddy Keith McPherson. New ep is up. It's called the BXP, by the way. It's up now. Next one drops on Thursday. All right, so now let's get into specific stuff. When we talk about my plan, our plan, a vision for this team moving forward, we can lament about what went down. Let's push this thing forward. In my opinion, I think people are a little fixated on the wrong stuff here. I think everybody's focused on the additions, which obviously is a huge subset of this offseason. But Sweeny, to me, it starts with deletions. And you're right. They're not going to say it at the press conference on Friday. I certainly give that to Cash. I know that you don't divulge stuff like that. But And we could get into, can you really get rid of this guy? Just let me run through something for you.
Go.
Donaldson, gone. Hicks, gone. Gleyber Torres, gone. I start with that, okay? I bring back Benintendi. I obviously try to bring back Rizzo. Judge is a given. You have to try to make that happen. By trading Torres, what I now do is I open up a competition for Peraza and Volpe in spring training. Whomever wins the shortstop job, you're the shortstop. Whomever loses, you're playing second. And oh, yeah, by the way, I'm signing Correa, and you're coming to play third. That's my plan if I'm the Yankees.
Sure.
What do you think?
I think you have to attack it a number of different ways because you know that your plan A isn't going to just fall in. There's too many other people making those decisions, right? So you've got to have something. I go into this thinking, okay, if you're prepared to eat salary, okay, significant portions of it, and it might be as simple as I'm going to release this player and take all the hit, okay, then you have to think of losing 2 out of the 3, let's say, and be satisfied with losing 2 of the 3 you mentioned. Torres, Donaldson,
I'd give
Hicks.
Torres one more. Yes, I'd like all 3, but
you have
I'd
to
rather
be satisfied.
Torres stay.
You have to be satisfied. Well, however it works. I don't think you can.
Oh, no, Donaldson cannot be on this team next year.
That's
Neither can
fine.
Hicks. They got to move on. Can't have it. You
That's
cannot
fine.
have this negative energy starting. They got to go, Sweeny.
That's fine, but I'm saying you have to make the move to make sure you get the right pieces in place around them and have the right pieces there. So it's not all one fluid thing. So I think you're obviously going to explore trade options for Torres, but they're not going to be quite as fruitful because one of the things that I talked about with Keith actually the other day is that people have wanted Gleyber Torres. Well, yeah, they wanted him for years because he was young and cheap. He's not young and cheap anymore, okay?
Yes.
So the market for him is going to be a lot less despite what kind of a good player you think he is, okay?
Agreed.
So that's going to impact things. I think the idea of whoever loses shortstop saying he's my second baseman, I don't think that's what. I mean, what if the losing shortstop hits 180? Okay.
Well, then you have DJ play second for a little bit.
That's
stopgap.
And you have to know what kind of shape he's in physically. Did he have surgery? Did it work? Did he not have surgery? Is this going to be a continued problem again because he didn't have it?
Yeah.
Is his rehab going to be satisfied?
Sweeny, let me
is he
ask you
better
this.
at second or is he better at third?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think Peraza has kind of an open shot to win shortstop.
Yep.
And then you kind of move out from there. Oswaldo Cabrera could be a real piece here.
I like him.
At second base or third base,
Or left
depending
field.
on what you do, or left field. But he's an infielder by trade. He's played outfield. He's fine. But I think we saw even a little bit some of the inexperience in different places, especially in the outfield. But I think you have trouble also if you're going to be married to saying I've got 2 guys with a combined 2 months of big league playing experience as half of my infield. You're really banking on, okay, now Aaron Judge has to sign back. Rizzo has to sign back. I need more offense from these other places. And if you're going to be committed to Peraza, I think you have to be committed to Peraza even if he's hitting 205 in August.
By the way, let's just back it up for a second. Sweeny, Murti, do you think that there is a chance, like a real chance, not a pipe dream, that the Yankees would actually eat that Donaldson Hicks money? Or are we just wasting time? Like, is there any chance they actually do it?
No, I think you'd have to at least consider it a chance. I think everything has to be on the table. But to what degree, okay? Like the extreme is release them, eat all of it. The other part of it is eat some and trade, right? And so there's a lot of wiggle room in between there. I think you have to be open to all of it and see what your options are. I mean, unfortunately, like Donaldson had really good years in 20 and 21 for Minnesota and just looked old all of a sudden. The difference between 35 and 36 for him seemed to be very extreme. And while you were waiting all year long and saying, okay, he can get going, the numbers just never worked in his favor. And all the percentages and all the metrics and everything just seemed to indicate all of a sudden that all you were counting on was a hot streak because something long and sustained didn't appear to be in the cards anymore because he just, the age seemed to catch up with him.
Yeah.
So now you have that trying to figure out, is somebody going to take that for how much money? I think you have to really consider doing significant portions of that salary, both of those salaries, to get better players there and figure out how to move it around.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the free agent everybody is focused on is Aaron Judge, but I'm wondering if there's someone out there that you think the Yankees could be targeting. We know what their starting rotation is going to look like for the most part. Garrett Cole, Luis Severino, they picked up his options, $15 million. Nestor is going to be back, and they have other Hermanes, all those guys. They're going to be there, but the closer situation is a little less clear. Clay Holmes is obviously slotted in there theoretically, but we know how he finished. Maybe Michael King. Like, what do they plan with closer? Because we've seen how important that is. We saw the Mets jump right on Edwin Diaz, didn't even let him sniff real free agency. What's the plan for closer for the Yankees in your estimation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that they do have some of these internal options. For a couple of years, I've really thought Jonathan Loaizaga was going to be the guy who can step up and move in. And I really thought last offseason, I understood why they didn't do it because I think they had some questions with some other guys, but last offseason would have been time to eat some of Aroldis Chapman money, trade him, move Loaizaga to closer. I think they were already thinking about some depth issues, so they didn't trade Chapman. The thing that now bothers me about Loaizaga is I look back after seeing it was a couple of days after the ALCS ended, and I was watching the way the Astros and Phillies were using some of their bullpen pieces, and I look back at Loaizaga. Loaizaga, the last 2 full seasons on no rest or 1 day's rest, really has atrocious numbers. I mean, ERAs over 6 and 7 for over a pretty significant period of time, 2 full seasons, right? So that tells me if you're going to use it, his best work is turned in when he has at least 2 days rest. That's not a closer's role,
not even close.
So and I don't know if there's a great reason for it. I don't know if there's a physical limitation that if the injuries that he suffered are part of that, if they've been careful with him because of that, if it's something he can overcome, if he's physically stronger now, is he able to ascend to that role? Because you do have a little bit more control in how you use a closer because it's always with a lead, right?
Yeah.
Almost always with a lead, tie game at home, stuff like that. But you're not throwing him into 1 run down, 2 run down so much. So you control those outings a little bit better. But the back-to-backs are really something that you kind of need, and that hasn't been his strong suit. So I can see them as they always add more relievers, and some of these guys are coming back from injury. Michael King, Chad Green is a free agent. He's coming back from the injury. You might be able to see him for depending on later in the year.
I'm not worried about their bullpen as much, Sweeny. I'm really not.
Well, but this also leads
not
to
the bullpen,
pitching.
It's a closer.
Yeah.
It's a different.
Okay, yeah, and that's
conversation.
something that teams do. Listen, the Phillies didn't change their closer as they got going. Many of the teams that get to the World Series have done the same thing. I'm thinking Carlos Rodon is actually a pretty good rotation option.
Yep.
You can never have enough pitching.
I
really was disappointed they didn't make a bigger play for him at the deadline. But from what I was told, they were never going to be able to really get anywhere with those top end trade targets if they weren't going to move Peraza or Volpe. So everything kind of died on the vine.
Well, Sweeny, think about this, but because that gets back to really how we started the conversation. If the Yankees, and I get it, if they've got conviction, and maybe this time they'll actually be right that their young players are good, instead of always being wrong the last 10 years or so. Like, if they were that convicted and not trading them for other pieces during the season, then why the hell wouldn't these kids start this season?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's not again, it's a matter of like how ready they are. Like, you've got guys like these guys are higher up in the system, so that's a much fairer question. But like when you got a guy who's considered a top prospect and he's 19 in an A ball,
well, like Dominguez. Like somebody like that. I got you. Yeah.
Like he's not going to ascend to left field next year. That's not. He's good prospect. Play him now.
Mm-hmm.
There's still development stuff there, and that's kind of they talked around that a little bit with Peraza. If you were listening on Friday too, like that was kind of the thing with why Peraza wasn't brought up is that there were still. It might have just been consistency issues as opposed to something he doesn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
It might have just been do these 2 or 3 things more consistently well. But they kind of danced around the idea that he wasn't ready to play last summer, and I kind of tried to get some answers on that, but it really ended up being more about, okay, they didn't think he was consistent enough, apparently, is what I gathered out of it, and they were really convinced that Kiner Falefa was going to improve enough or, had enough to get through that. And obviously, he went a little bit backwards at the end of the year.
Yeah, BT mentioned Carlos Correa earlier. What about Trey Turner?
I have his name written down because he's an interesting possibility because of the way he can move around, right?
I love him.
Correa is interesting, obviously, too, but he has had some injury issues in his career. He has had subpar offensive years. Turner seems to be the guy who's peaking offensively these last couple of years. After some early years, he seems to have really kind of started to figure himself out. He's been consistently healthy, and you have the ability to. I mean, you can see him anywhere in the middle of the diamond, right?
Yeah.
Shortstop, second, center field. But you have Bader, but you could see Turner as a possibility there. And listen, it's way too early in the offseason to be throwing out this guy, that guy attached to this guy. But as we're starting to think about, I kind of feel like, BT, you mentioned Benintendi, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's, for argument's sake, say they're going to bring back Judge and Benintendi, okay?
Yep.
Your outfield is set.
Yeah, all set.
Right?
Set.
So the infield is kind of where you really kind of have to think about, I don't want to use the term blowing things up, but you kind of have to really maneuver to improve the infield, because you do have somewhat, let's say, somewhat more proven things in the outfield for you. Okay, so I was just looking at a couple of names that kind of jump out, because based on the way I know the Yankees think, and this has nothing to do with them saying anything
Go ahead.
or who they're interested in.
Uh-huh.
One is the guy they traded for 5 years ago, is Brandon Drury, right? 4 years ago. He's a guy who had bounced around to about 5 different teams because he was injured. All of a sudden, he's an all-star last year, played well in San Diego. He's a third baseman, first base type, okay?
Who else?
Joey Wendell was a guy who played with Tampa Bay.
I like him. I
and
actually
he's a
always
guy who bounced.
liked him.
He's a better second baseman than the third baseman.
Lefty stick. I like
lefty
him.
hitter who's, again, I do think that they've made some efforts to get more contact-oriented guys in there, because
I agree with that too.
Signing, really since signing LeMahieu, trading for Rizzo, trading for Benintendi, even Connor Falefa, Trevino, and Donaldson was not as high a strikeout guy.
No, not at all.
So they made efforts to reduce those.
Yeah.
Now you kind of have to remaneuver again, because some of those worked and some of them didn't.
All right, well, listen, we can honestly do this all day. We can't, because we got to take a break.
Let's. Yeah, why not?
Well, I mean, listen, we'll meet up at the bar. We'll have the conversation a little later. We go with that or no?
I don't get paid at the bar, bro.
Yeah, but that's where the best conversations are, dude.
Doesn't matter.
BT will buy your drinks.
Hold on, my bad. 20 seconds, and you're like me. You can't shut your mouth. You start going, you go. That's not a bad thing. I do the same thing. But I need 20 seconds. Is there any chance the Yankees, if they can't get rid of Donaldson, Hicks, whatever, that they investigate, I know he's got a no trade, trading Stanton plus a prospect to entice somebody to eat some of that money? Any chance? Any? You got to be quick. Go.
I don't think so. I think there are two limited options for him to trade, and it just doesn't seem to, with them having the DH too, and then maybe want to work in a little outfield rotation. I get it. I just don't see it as a possibility. I think he's locked into this for a long time.
Dude, awesome chat. Thank you very much, sweetie.
Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, you got it. The BXB podcast is up with Keith McPherson and Sweeny. New episode's going to drop on Thursday. WFAN Yankee beat man Sweeny Murti. Good stuff. I think you guys might want to react to a little something there. We think, Tiki.